Welcome to TOMGIRL, where we talk all things sports, entertainment, fashion, and adventure. On this episode, we're going all out adventure with off-roader, driver, adventurer, and Team Bronco Ambassador, Shelby Hall. Welcome to the show, Shelby.
Oh, thank you. It is such an honor to be here. Thank you for asking.
Oh, I'm so grateful you did. So in February, I wanted to focus on like things that I love that I thought other Tom girls would love. And like two things I love are Broncos and adventure. And once I found
Thanks.
you on Instagram and stalked you, I was like, oh my gosh, this girl's doing these things to the extreme. So I was so excited when you said yes and that you were willing to do this.
That means a lot to me. I feel like I'm kind of like all over the place sometimes. I made a goal for last year, for 2022, that was my first year as being an official Bronco ambassador. And I just was over the moon. And so I made it a goal of mine to travel to as many off-road places as I could go. And so I just started putting it out to the universe. I put it out on my Instagram. I was asking people, where should me and my Bronco go this year? Yeah. And I went so many incredible places. I took my stock Bronco, told all the way through Rubicon from start to finish. That was the first time I'd done that. I was in Moab. I went to San Felipe. I went to Big Bear Bronco Bash. I mean, I was just everywhere. It was really incredible.
Yeah. How did that feel? And like which one was your favorite? I mean, that's probably hard to say. There's a lot of different.
Well, so it is hard to say. And I have three favorites. So we'll do top three, yeah. And in no particular order, because they all were really special to me in different ways. So the first one is the Rubicon Trail. The Rubicon Trail is known as, one of the toughest trails in the U.S. It isn't shockingly long, but there's shockingly big obstacles. And so it takes hours and hours and hours and hours to get through it. And my family has ties with the Rubicon Trail, so it was pretty special to be able to bring my Bronco in there. And I might have been only the second person with a Bronco. So I went for an event called Jeepers Jamboree. But, Jeeping is just an old term for off-roading. So there was all Jeeps and two Broncos, and mine was totally stock. And all these Jeeps were like on 40s. They were very modified. And I got a few looks of, what are you doing here? And I said, I'm running the trail just like you. Yeah. And it was a blast because I got to prove a few guys wrong. And it was the first time I got to take my boyfriend on the Rubicon Trail. And he's always been in the high octane desert racing trophy truck scene. And to be able to show him what it's like to slow down a little bit and actually take in the sights, and it's not a competition, it's there for enjoyment, he was hooked. He loved it immediately. So that was pretty special. I did a multi-day trip in Moab, which that was a first time for me. My adrenaline was like skyrocketed the whole time. I don't know. I mean, in my world, you are supposed to avoid rocks. And in Moab, you're like, let's just drive straight up this thing. So I was like, I don't know. But I was there with another Bronco ambassador, Chase Gentry, and he had quite a bit of experience there. And so he was so much fun to go with, conquered every obstacle that we attempted. And then I would say Big Bear Bronco Bash. It was the first all Bronco event, off-roading event that I attended, and just so many awesome people. That was really my favorite part of Big Bear Bronco Bash.
So what was the difference when you talk about going up the rocks? Like, how did your strategy change from not doing that before?
Well, you really have to utilize a spotter. because you can't see what's happening in front of you most of the time. It's like all sky. And so you have to have a pretty good trust with that spotter. It's very easy to flop. And that was really it for me, because it's the same techniques, really. It's managing your throttle, smooth, steady throttle, knowing your gears, and really knowing your vehicle, knowing how level it needs to be, tire placement. So it's all the same foundation of off-roading, just a lot of vertical action.
Awesome. Well, and then it's also through there to hear you say that you had I have a Jeep, so it's nice to know too that when you're on your first one, that Jeep and Bronco people can like connect, and
They can.
like
I feel like that was probably my most successful job of being an ambassador for Bronco, because I will say there were a few people that I don't think were that pumped to see a Bronco there, and probably a female driver. So there was no kidding. I pulled up to so there's a ton of vehicles on this trip. There's probably like 150. So you pull up and you kind of wait your turn to start on the trail. And a couple guys walked up to me and said, well, first of all, most people don't think that it's my vehicle. They, of course, think it's my boyfriend's. Mm-hmm. And so they approach him and tell him, oh, that thing's so cool, blah, 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 which is, that's just part of the deal. He always turns it over, though. He's like, not mine, that's hers. But so we pull up to start the trail, and a couple Jeep guys come up to me and asked me how far I actually intended to drive my Bronco on the trail. Like, I wouldn't make it.
Yeah.
And we joked around with them a bit. And once they saw the Bronco in action and they saw it drive through the whole trail, we had some new friends and some new fans.
How does it feel for you when you're able to shift like the stereotypes and that kind of turn that male ego around?
It feels amazing.
Yeah. I bet.
Not gonna lie, it feels amazing. It definitely makes me feel a little bit of pressure during the beginning. It's like all eyes are on you. And as a female, I have found, whether competing or just being in the off-road industry, you're really looked at under a microscope, and any mistake that you make gets blown out of proportion. If a female gets a flat tire, oh, it's talked about. If a guy gets a flat tire, it's like, oh, that's just what happens. Yeah. So I will admit that is always in the back of my mind, and I'm very nervous at the beginning of any event, but thankfully the nerves wear off and it just gets fun.
Yeah. Let's talk about how you got started and how you found this passion, because you come from a legendary family, obviously, of off-roading. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, so I have been in the off-road world since I was born, and like, that is not a joke. And it all really started with my grandfather, Rod Hall. And he got into the off-road world as a fairly young man. He always said this as a joke, but I actually think this was reality. He had a motorcycle to begin with, and he very quickly learned that he could not fit both an ice chest and a girl on the back of his motorcycle. So he had to get a four-wheel drive.
Awesome.
I know, which is totally him. Like, I don't think it's a joke. So he just started out as, he was passionate about it. He just loved it. It was fun. And he was never one for a typical 9-to-5 job. And so when he found that he was actually really good at off-roading, he just stuck his mind to it and ended up becoming one of the most successful desert racers of all time. And he really was a pioneer of the sport. He He restarted the Off-Road Motorsports Hall of Fame. So his passion for off-roading was really beyond just driving. You know, he felt like off-road motorsports was a real sport and the people involved needed recognition, and he really dedicated his whole life to it. So, you know, that was what I knew. That was some of my earliest memories. I was before school age, so probably 4. My mom and my dad had an off-road driving school. And so my mom would pack me up and take us out to the desert, and we would just be in like a RV during the day while my dad was teaching. My mom managed kind of the site where the RV is. And at the end of the day, I would beg my dad to take me for a ride in the race truck. So he'd strap me in. You know, I wasn't even big enough to see over the dash, and he would be driving along, and it was never fast enough. I would always tell him to go faster, go faster. And, you know, that must have been where it all started. I loved that adventure. And there's pictures of me probably 6 or 7, riding on my grandpa's lap, and he's teaching me how to steer in an H1 Hummer. That was the vehicle I learned how to drive in. He would manage the pedals, and he would coach me on what to do with the steering wheel. And by the time I was 13, I was driving the Hummers by myself. And I think it just, that side of adventure is what has always appealed to me. I, like my grandfather, tried to have a 9-to-5 job, and that just, it wasn't for me. I felt like I was in a box.
What field were you in?
So I actually worked at a doctor's office, and, you know, working a front desk, and it just was not, it wasn't for me.
How did you decide then, okay, I can turn my passion into my career, so that you could get out of that 9-to-5?
Well, I didn't. Luckily for me, my grandfather had quite a few businesses, and he always said he was retiring, and then he would start this little business. And he just couldn't get away from being in the dirt. Every business that he had was somehow related to off-road driving. So so when I decided that I was going to get a real job, is what I thought I needed, so I'd always worked for the family businesses prior to that, and you're 1099, you don't get insurance, you don't get the perks of a regular job. And so there was a point in my 20s where I thought, okay, I need to have all those benefits that you get with a real job. So I did that. I think I lasted about 9 months, and I called up my grandpa, and I was like, this is my living hell. I can't do this. And he laughed, and he said, well, you made it longer than I thought you would. And luckily for you, we could really use your help on this training business that we've started. And that was where I really felt where my life was going to go, was with this training business. And then pretty shortly after that, my grandfather got sick. He ended up having a disease called progressive supranuclear palsy, which is a Parkinsonian-like disease. And really quickly, he ended up in a wheelchair, and it was not pretty. And we made the executive decision to close the business. And I was kind of like, what do I do now? Like that's what I thought my future was going to be. I mean, I'd never thought that I would lose my grandfather. It was a scary time for me. I think I just, you know, all through high school, even, I wasn't that involved with what my family was doing when I was in high school, and I was really lost. I never really felt like I belonged anywhere, and I didn't know what I wanted to do. I felt like I saw kids around me who knew what they wanted to do when they grow up, and I didn't have that. And when my grandfather really took me under his wing in my early 20s, he gave me the shit jobs, but he wanted me to learn how to work from the bottom up. And as soon as I could prove that I would do that shitty job really well, he would let me move on to whatever that next step was. So just like racing with him, I had to earn that. And I spent a lot of time with my grandfather, and I just loved being outdoors with him. I loved exploring. I loved this life of adventure that he seemed to live. You know, he was up with the sun and always had this confidence, and he had a small group of really good friends that loved to do all the things that he did. And I just finally felt like I was where I was supposed to be. I finally felt like I was good at something. I finally enjoyed my days. And that's stuck with me. And so I guess fast forward to 2019, I mean, I never thought I'd be able to make a career out of off-roading or being in the sport. I thought it would always be just a hobby that I would do as much as I could when I could. But in 2019, Ford Motor Company sent a small team, really from their like communications team, to Reno, Nevada, which is where we lived at the time. And they hosted a very small meeting. It was with my grandpa, my grandma, my dad, and myself. And they were finally going to show us what the new gen Bronco was going to look like. Everything else online had been these, you know, just the renderings and people's crazy ideas. So they brought a virtual reality setup, which my grandpa was in a wheelchair. This was March of 2019. So it was perfect for him to be able to just sit in his chair and put on the virtual reality glasses. And it was just a really special moment. They thanked him for everything he'd done for the brand and setting the record of being the only four-wheel drive vehicle to ever win the Baja 1000, still to this day. And it meant so much to me. You know, I knew that they were, you know, they wanted to tell his story with the launch of the new Bronco. But the fact that they would come out and give him the recognition, it meant so much. And so I stayed in contact with them and sent them an email telling them how much it meant to our family. And they said to me, well, we had no idea that Rod Hall had a granddaughter, and we had no idea that you raced. This is really interesting. We would love to have you be involved. We don't know how, but we'll keep you posted. And I had no idea what that meant. You know, I would just wanted to say thank you. So next thing I know, they invited me to Detroit to have a tour of the archives, and I got to see the whole creation of the Bronco. And I was sort of like, is this reality? Is this happening? Why am I here? Why am I here? And at that time, they asked me if I would be interested in driving the Bronco R for the 2019 Baja 1000. And they said, oh, you don't have to give us an answer now. I know it's a lot to think about. And I was like, okay, as soon as they scooped me up off the floor, because I think I passed out, I was like, hell yes. I don't have to think about it.
Yeah, here's your answer.
I'm in.
Awesome.
And that year was a tough year for Bronco R. We didn't finish the race. And I had all these ideas just running through my head of what I thought would help make the brand successful. And I just thought to myself, Shelby, how often do you have Ford Motor Company sitting in front of you. If they say no to any of your ideas, who cares? You're in the same boat that you're currently in. And so that's when I presented the idea for us to compete in the Rebelle Rally, which is an 8-day all-female navigational rally. And they said yes. And they not only said yes, but we would like to field 3 teams, and we're hoping that you can put all those teams together and manage them. And I was on cloud 9. You know, it was incredible. We went and we won that year. So we were the first team to capture a first place finish for the new gen Bronco, which is so unreal. You know, it was, and for it to be an all-female team, that's so rad. Sadly, my grandfather had passed away in June of 2019, so he didn't get to know that I was having this new relationship with Ford, but it still meant a lot. He always wore a Stetson cowboy hat when he was younger, and so I brought one of his favorite hats with me on the rally. So he was along for the ride, and then I wore that for the gala. It was really cool.
That's really sweet.
And since 2019, we've kept working together, and you know, they put me on the brand team, and I got to help develop the curriculum for the all ladies Bronco Off Rodeo, which is the training platform for folks who buy a Bronco. And, you know, it just feels like a dream most of the time. Sometimes not. Sometimes it's
work, I'm sure. Yeah.
Really hard.
Yeah.
But when I reflect on everything as a whole, I cannot believe this is what I'm doing.
Yeah. And how does it feel? Because I know you're doing other events, like the OWN event you're starting this coming up weekend, and then you're involved with Bronco Babes and different organizations. Let's kind of talk about the female driving Bronco community.
So in 2020, I think it was, Bronco was doing a circuit of arrive and drives around the United States. People weren't getting their Broncos yet, and so they were hosting these arrive and drives so that people got an opportunity to see them, feel them, touch them. People had placed orders and not even seen one in person. I mean, that's how iconic these vehicles are. And so I was a pro driver for that circuit, and we would get people in our Bronco for 4 minutes. And I really utilized those 4 minutes to learn about the consumer and ask them questions of, are you going to take your Bronco off-roading? Do you know what a locker is? Why are you buying this Bronco? Who is buying this Bronco? Is it the male or is it the female in the family? And come to find out, a lot of women, a majority of the buyers are women, and they don't have a lot of off-road experience. And so I wanted to change that. I want women to feel that same feeling that I have when I show up to the Rubicon Trail and show up those assholes who think I can't do it. I want other women to have that feeling. I want them to move from the passenger seat to the driver's seat and have their boyfriend ride shotgun, you know? And the only way that we're going to be able to do that for them is to show them. We can talk about it all we want, but we have to show them. And spending the last year as an ambassador, like I said, I made it my duty to go to as many off-road events as I could so that I could get to know people. You know, social media is fine, and it's a great way to get a lot of eyeballs and a lot of impressions, but engagement and one-on-one engagement is what we need as humans, you know, like we need that personal interaction. And I fell in love with it. I fell in love with meeting the people, and I fell in love with showing people how to use their Bronco. I love my Bronco. I love them. Ford did an incredible job building an off-road vehicle from the manufacturer. And so I just want to keep doing that. I want to continue to be an advocate for women. I want to continue to host events that get people behind the wheel so that they get to have fun in their Bronco and get to meet other people who share the same passion.
I love it. Absolutely love it. Okay. So give us if you were going to have a new person out who's never been off-roading before, a new girl, like what tips would you give right away? What are the terms she should know? Just a quick basic rundown of what you would teach first to the ultimate beginner.
So I would say the top things to always remember is four-wheel drive and lockers, if you have them. They make life a lot easier, and they also help preserve the trail. You know, that's something we have to think about so much these days, is how do we be respectful to the land so that we can keep using it. So knowing proper use of four-wheel drive and proper use of your lockers. And I would say it's very important to learn throttle control. That will get you out of a lot of mistakes. Sometimes speed is not always your friend. And I would say the third thing is learning tire placement. It's all about where you place your tires to keep the vehicle level so that you don't get a flat, so that you have most traction. And those three things together is an amazing foundation to be able to, once you have those on lock, then you can go a little faster. And then you can add in more, more flair.
Mm-hmm. So what are lockers for people that don't know what lockers are?
Yeah, so it depends on what package you get with the Bronco, but I have a wild track, so I have both front and rear lockers. And the way that I like to explain it is that really your vehicle is lazy. And as soon as you get one tire off the ground, it wants to send all the power there because there's really no resistance. And it's lazy. So it's like, cool, it's way easier to spin that tire that's in the air, but that's not going to move us forward. So when we lock our differential, we are making it so that the tires have to receive equal power, so that tire that's still on the ground gets to actually move us forward.
All right, great. Oh man, I want to take your class. I want to go. That's so awesome. That sounds so much fun. I love it. So you're teaching also, you're an instructor for the current Rebelle Rally, aren't you?
I am.
Yeah. So tell me about that.
Yeah. So I am an official trainer for Rebelle U as well as Overland Expo. Last year was my first year with Overland Expo, which is amazing. And for Rebelle U, which Rebelle U is a training platform for any women who are interested in the Rebelle or going to compete. And, we're really focusing on the fundamentals. So just like what you asked, focusing on the fundamentals and then also specializing in dunes. We have quite a bit of dune days in Rebelle, and that can make or break your competition. And, the dunes are very intimidating. There's not a ton of dunes all over the United States. And where we compete in the Rebelle is called Glamis, the Imperial Sand Dunes, which I believe is the largest sand dune area in the United States. And I remember the first year I saw it, and I was like, oh my God, I'm not ready for this. I was so scared. We came over this rise and it was an ocean of sand dunes. But now, you just take it a beat at a time, and it's great. So that's what I do with Rebelle. So we really focus on eye placement and utilizing what the vehicle has to offer. And it's the same thing for Overland Expo, except there's actually a special area where they host us. And I work really primarily on the driving course. And I love working with people that have like crossovers or less capable vehicles, because a lot of times they feel like, oh, well, I'm in this, I can't do that, but they can. But it's all about learning how to approach your obstacle.
Tell me about some of the vehicles that you've had, because I know your first, correct me if I'm wrong, was a 1968 Bronco that your grandpa's was in the Hall of Fame and you took it out?
Yes. So I luckily still have that. So the very first vehicle that I raced was an H3 Hummer. which was a blast. And after that, the next was a 1968 Bronco, which was the Bronco that my grandpa won the Baja 1000 in. So it's the Bronco. And, you know, at the time, so this was 2015. At the time, I don't know, I guess I was just young and fearless or something. I actually approached my grandfather. So the Bronco had been sitting in a museum for years and years and years and years and years, and had been aesthetically restored and looked awesome. But mechanically, it was not. And mechanically, it was very sad. So I had started learning about the Nora Mexican 1000, which is a vintage race. It specializes in hosting vintage vehicles. And I said to my grandpa, man, what is the Bronco just doing sitting in a museum? That thing needs to be running and back in Baja. And to my surprise, he said, yeah, okay, let's pull that thing out, let's restore it, and let's go race it. And we did. So we raced it for 2 years down in Mexico. I raced it at the Mint 400. And that actually ended up being my grandfather's last vehicle that he was able to drive, which is like really full circle.
Yeah.
And he gifted it to me when he passed. And that Bronco is so special to me. You know, it was a very bonding experience for him and I to race that thing together, and we kept it as original as possible. And I don't know how in the world he raced that thing. Like, it's sort of like driving a wheelbarrow. but it's a badass wheelbarrow.
Yeah.
It just you know, it's really special to have that, and I have it still. I don't know if you've seen the documentary on my grandfather called One More Win, but of course that Bronco is a star in that documentary. And so recently, Amy Lerner, the producer, did a little PR tour for the documentary. And so we brought out the Bronco, the old Bronco. And the journalists were asking me, so where are we going to see the Bronco next? And I've had it in my mind that that thing is not going on dirt anymore. It's too precious. I don't want to do that, but we're going to get it street legal. And as soon as I started saying the words, we're going to make it street legal so I can drive it down PCH, I thought, what am I saying? PCH is scarier than the middle of the desert. I mean, wow. I can't control what everybody else around me is doing. Yeah,
exactly.
Out in the desert, I can control what I'm doing.
Yeah.
And I now think I want to get it back in racing shape. It's still in great running order. I mean, it was on Jay Leno's garage just a month ago.
Yeah.
So Jay got to drive it, which is awesome. So that's on my goal list, is to get that baby back up and running, and I want to race it again.
You had to have made that Bronco so happy. I'm sure it was just, you know, sad being stuck inside, you know, and so you bring
Totally.
it back out, right? Like an animal in the zoo, like, let me
Yes.
Yeah. Do you have, you know, we've seen now like vintage Broncos. My goal was to have a 1976, but I just love them vintage Broncos so much. But like we were talking about, the price is insane these days. Do you have a dream Bronco that you would like, or have you already had it?
I have it.
With your grandpa's, yeah.
I have it. You know, that one, it just, I mean, yes, I would have huge garages filled with Broncos. I love them so much. It would be cool to have a vintage Bronco that I don't mind cutting up and like putting a nice suspension on and really having like a badass race truck with it. I will never do that to the old one. But you know, I have a 21 Wild Track, and it's a 2-door, and Ford designed the racing livery based off of my grandfather's Bronco, which is very cool. So all of the race Broncos, not just mine, have a very similar livery. And that one has become my baby. You know, that one, it's been through hell and back. It was a pre-production that they had to do work to make it saleable, like all this crazy stuff. And I don't care. It has become to me what the 68 was to my grandpa. And I think it's pretty rad that I have those two to, you know, remind me where I'm going.
Yeah, definitely. What is racing and off-road like? What does that bring to your life? What do you love most about it?
I love racing. I love it. I didn't race for 2 years. After we raced the Baja 1000 in 2020, I was so busy doing all the consumer work with Ford that racing just wasn't in the works for me. And I don't have my own race team at this time, and so I join other teams as a driver. And then I joined a girlfriend of mine at the end of 2022, and we took her Can-Am out and we went and raced a super fun 2-day race. And it's what makes my heart sing. It is, I don't have to do it professionally. I just want to get out there, and I can't help but be competitive. I cannot just go out there and be like, oh, that was fun, whatever. I go out there and I'm like so so ready to kick ass. It is, I love it. And I had the biggest smile on my face after that. I was so grateful that my girlfriend let me join her, and it has inspired me to start building my own car. So
Yeah. You had talked about in some of your posts, you know, sometimes that it's not always easy. So you were out there on these adventures and you know, maybe hit those points when you're like, oh shit, what am I going to do? Or how am I going to get through this? How have you like, you know, pushed through those times when maybe you are doubtful or you hit something that scares you a bit? How have you been able to navigate through those areas?
It's hard. There's definitely days and moments that suck. And you wonder, like, whose idea was this? Why am I doing this? I don't know how to do this. You know, like anybody, I do think that we view others who do things that we don't know how to do or that we wish we could do, that they're fearless, or that I walk out of the door every day like I own this, I got this, I'm a badass. And that's just not the case. You know, there's days, yeah, where you feel like $1 million and days where you feel like a phony. And I don't know. I guess I have really amazing people around me who support me and believe in me tenfold over what I believe in myself. And the days when I'm feeling challenged, I talk about it. That's one thing I've learned to do over time, is be open about my feelings and have people around me who are mentors that I can pick up the phone and just say, what do I do? You know, I've hit a wall. I don't know which road to take. What do I do? And they're there for me. And most of them, you know, it's hard to find mentors who are females in the off-road world who understand, you know, being an entrepreneur and all these different aspects. But I have found a few, and they are badass, and they support me every step of the way. My boyfriend supports me every step of the way. Any crazy idea I have, he's like, I'm right behind you. What can I do to help you? And I think it's just so vital to have a support system, because those days, I mean, that's life. Like, those days are here. And as an entrepreneur and as a person, as a woman in this industry, I have to hustle every day. I don't have a 9-to-5 job. You know, I don't get to just go and clock in and then clock out and call it a day. I'm constantly on. I'm constantly having to figure out what my next step is going to be, and what company is going to be a good partner that believes in the same things that I believe in. And, you know, it's a lot.
Yeah. Well, you're inspiring so many women out there and me. Yeah. I love it. And, when I guess, we always need those moments where too, I think those times when probably you couldn't get through something or feeling like you face those obstacles that you've never faced before, they're harder, but then that feeling that comes out on the other side,
Yep.
just can drive you so much more through
And
everything.
that I try to be positive. And I think that everything that happens to us is meant to be. And stressing over everything doesn't help make any situation better. But I try to take every mishap as a learning lesson. My Rebelle Rally last year was really challenging for my team and I, and we did not finish the way that we wanted. And there were tears, man. There were tears throughout that rally, and I got home from the rally and really was feeling pretty low. I have people that I feel like expect the world, which I think it's me that expects the world. And so there was, some pretty heavy weight on my shoulders after that. And I called one of my mentors and I said, hey, I just need to talk. And she said, Shelby, I know this sucks and I know this is really hard, but this is your opportunity to level up. This is your opportunity to learn from what happened and level up. This is just for you. And as soon as she said that, I was like, you're right. There's so much to learn, so much that I could have done better. I could have communicated better. There's so much that I'm learning from this mishap and can be such a bigger, better person from it.
Yeah.
So, it doesn't come right away, mm-hmm. But thankfully the strength around me helps lift me up.
And what advice would you have for other people who want to get into racing or have an interest in off-roading?
Well, I think that, racing is a big task. There's a lot that goes into it. It's quite expensive. You need not just a race car, but you need a truck and a trailer, and you need a place to store it. And there's a lot that comes with it. So I think start small and go to a training class. If you want to learn how to off-road, join, I think, actually, I'm not sure if just anyone can go to the Rebelle training, but they might. So I will look that up and get back to you.
Okay, sounds good.
But training through Overland Expo, Nina Barlow does a lot of off-road training. There's opportunities to go and learn the right way. There's opportunities to go and learn the wrong way, just go out and pedal to the metal, and that's one way to learn.
Yeah.
But I say start small, get your four-wheel drive, and go out for rides. Join a club and go on group rides. That's how you really get to get your feet wet in off-roading. And then once you're like, oh, okay, yeah, I like that higher speed stuff. Okay, well then you start going to the desert instead of maybe the mountains. And I think start by making it what you do on the weekends. And then you just progressively get better and better. And if you want to start racing, hang out with racers, go to the race, be a spectator, figure out how you can help. That's the thing, is race teams always need another hand. So if you have a skill, if you are good at logistics, if you're a good mechanic, if you're great on a radio, there's probably a spot for you. You just have to ask.
Great advice. Awesome. Well, you are so wonderful. I just can't thank you enough for taking the time to share with us all today. It's absolutely fascinating. I love your story. So I just want to thank you for taking the time.
Thank you. Thanks for, I feel like I was talking your ear off.
I know. I loved it. I could let you go all day. So tell us what's next for you. Like if you have any events coming up or where people can follow you on social media and just stay on top of your story.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm pretty active on Instagram, Shelby Hall Off-Road. And next up for me, I'm hosting a Bronco trail ride. Actually, it's a whole weekend event. It's this coming weekend, President's Day weekend. We are full. Registration is full, which I'm over the moon about. But we're taking people on an awesome trail ride. We are taking over a whole entire restaurant. We're having a Bronco street party. And then we are also taking everyone to Pelter Winery for bands and food and, just camaraderie. And then we will be camping together that night, which will be really fun. So we have a little VIP bonfire. And then next up for me, actually, I'm heading to Baja, which I'm very excited about. I haven't really announced to anyone, but I'm taking my Bronco for its first Baja off-road trip, which I cannot believe this is my first all off-roading trip in Baja with it. But 6 days down in Baja, we're joining a Bronco only trail run. It's gonna be amazing. I cannot wait.
But all those events just sound fantastic. I read about that camp out over Instagram, and I was telling my boyfriend, I'm like, man, I wish I had a Bronco. This sounds like an amazing weekend to go.
We've had so much interest and have sadly had to say, sorry, registration's full, that we are 100% hosting more events like this. We want people to enjoy their Bronco. A lot of folks who are coming are female, which is awesome, and new to their Bronco. And so they're really excited to learn how it works and take it off-road. And we just want people to enjoy it. Get off your phone, get off social media. Don't come just to create content. Come to create some depth in your life and meet some new people. And I'm so stoked to be one to create this.
Yeah, I absolutely love it. Love what you're doing and what you're creating. So you're just incredible. So thank you so much. All right, guys, that's it for this show. Thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you here again next time. In the meantime, follow us anywhere at tomgirl.tv, and we'll see you here next time. Bye.